Hello and welcome to the Build Podcast. I'm your host, Reese Price, and today I am very glad for the Build Podcast to have its very first IFBB Pro on the show. We have Australia's mostly recent crowned classic physique pro, Mr. Jaxon Guerin. Welcome, Jaxon.
Thank you very much for having me, man. I appreciate it. It's really exciting to be on the potty today to have a good chat with you.
Yeah, I'm very, very glad and very appreciative that you were able to make it onto the podcast. So this is actually, our first ever conversation together. Tell me a bit about yourself, like how old are you? What do you do for work? And how long have you been training?
Oh, yeah. Well, firstly, I'm 24 years old, so turning 25 in July, so I'm feeling old. No, I'm kidding. I'm also a online coach as well, a competitive bodybuilder too, and also as well, I'm currently now a posing coach, which I also do. And yeah, so it's been just great to experience this journey over the past couple of years and sort of move from just becoming like just an average person who trains and then moving to powerlifting, then moving into bodybuilding, then competitive bodybuilding, and then now being in the pro league. So yeah, pretty much I've been training for about I started picking up weights around 2015, end of 2015 when I was in like year 10. But I really got into the competitive natural bodybuilding scene in 2016. So that was my first competition. Then I did another one the year after that, 6 months later in 2017. And then 2018 and 2019 moved to powerlifting, and that was great. And then pretty much after that, COVID sort of came around. And then throughout that time, you probably know that I competed or tried to compete 3 times and unfortunately failed those preps. And then, here we are.
No, I didn't know that actually.
Yeah, so it's been a pretty wild ride for the past 6-7 years, but I've learnt a lot. I've been under some a fair amount of coaches as well, so I really like to learn different people's sort of metrics and methods of why they sort of implement this and utilize that. So it's been great to also come from different sports as well. And I did ballet for 6 years as well, and stage productions and acting, and then that led me into
doing, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a fair bit like going on, but so pretty much it's been like the past 10 years I've always been involved in sport due to my family as well. My father was he was an ex-Olympic athlete, and then my mum was like a really good tennis player. My brother played VFL. So yeah, I've been surrounded by a lot of sporting, peers in my life, and especially my family. So it's been pretty much nothing new to me in regards to, whether I'm picking up a weight or kicking the footy with friends or playing basketball or doing anything like that. So yeah, it's been really good. So yeah.
Yeah, wow. Well, I guess that kind of actually leads me to a few questions. So you used to be a powerlifter. So did you do any powerlifting competitions before bodybuilding?
Not before. In between, I competed in ICN as a teenager in IFBB, which was recently. Yes, I did. I actually did. I technically did one full meet, and then I did a push-pull meet when I was on my Europe trip when I was like 19. So I got roped into that. That was the first one I did, which was IPF, and yeah, it was all right. It was like just like a fun competition we did. And I remember like only bench pressing like 165 when I was 19, and then only pulling like 287.5. But then we got back in the year of 2020. I competed in the GPC Summer Classic, so that's Raw with Wraps. That was an untested division, but I was natural at the time. I was drug-free, and I totaled 762.5 kilos at 20. So that was, so I came fourth in the 125. So that was like pre-COVID when the competitive lineups were very, very deep, which it comes down to controversy, of course, due to travel, but that was when everyone could travel. So you had a lot of like Pro Raw winners and national championships all competing it there because that was leading into meant to be the Arnold Classic at the time. So that was a really fun experience and sort of learning the fundamentals behind like training, especially how to bench press, how to squat and deadlift, which I believe are very, very important pillars in developing your physique, not just from a bodybuilding standpoint, from an athlete standpoint as well. So thankful to that, I helped really develop like more of like a base and a foundation with my, my legs and, like my upper body with bench pressing and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was a really fun competition. I was like saying to myself, oh, I'll do another one end of this year, and then nationals went pretty well, and I'm like, yeah, not anymore. So,
No.
you know, so times have changed, but no, it was a great experience at the time, and I met some great people, and I just love powerlifting so much. It's such a fun sport, and I especially love to say how bodybuilding, powerlifting are so different yet so alike. On the
Mm.
factors of like it takes consistent preparation leading up to the day. But then on the day, it's more performance based on the day of the powerlifting meet. And then on the day of the show, it's more subjective. So, I think it's great just, applying also to like those powerlifting modules of like being performance based, being athlete based into bodybuilding. I think a lot of people who haven't come from powerlifting into bodybuilding don't take on that approach as an athlete. And I think that's something that I really love to take on like whatever goals I'm doing, like I look at the metrics of like, well, making sure my training is logged and progressive overload and all that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of powerlifters who get into this bodybuilding scheme and sport, they really look at the overall factors of like, what are the numbers looking like and logging the training. And yeah, so, but of course that can be only one sort of metric that you can follow in
Yeah, one factor.
multiple things. Yeah. So,
Hey guys, just quickly, I hope you are enjoying the podcast. It would mean a lot to me if you could make sure to like, follow, subscribe on both Spotify and YouTube or wherever you're viewing this podcast currently. It really does mean a lot, and it will help to grow the podcast so I can bring out more content, more podcasts, and invite more guests like you are listening to right now.
Yeah. So do you think that your background in powerlifting, you definitely did say it helped you to be able to develop, your, like, I guess you could say the laying foundations of your physique. Do you think it's something that is overseen in today's gym goers? Because I definitely do see, as a personal trainer myself as well and a bodybuilder, that we can start to see this shifting perspective that if you want to be a bodybuilder, you got to stay away from the big three. You got to stay away from barbell bench, barbell deadlifts, and even barbell squat, because obviously it can risk injury. So do you think that is something that you would not agree with?
oh, well, look, like I think like when it comes to, answering that kind of question, like easiest way is like you look at, well, like what does like scientific literature sort of, conclude to in a sense, like, so that's why I think, when it comes to also, looking at like previous ex-powerlifters into bodybuilders or, bodybuilders who become powerlifters, you look at some of their physiques like Stan Efferding, even like Mike O'Hearn, you look at physiques like that have developed core foundational principles from deadlifting heavy, squatting heavy, and bench pressing heavy, and you see how it's translated over to their training. I think that's more effective rather than actually implementing them throughout the whole period of, let's say, like a bodybuilding block. So, for example, like when it comes to like my clients, it's like, well, instead of providing them a barbell bench press, which is like one, there is a high association of like injury risk, but two, it can provide great load and a great stretch of the bottom position for the pecs. But you can implement so many other movements that are one, not as taxing, two, more safe, and three, probably even get like a greater stretch, for example. So that's just like one example of the big three that I would explain. And like even like myself, like I can deadlift like 320 kilos pretty easy, and that was like a year and a half ago, and probably I deadlift more now. But my back was probably my biggest weak point when you were looking at my physique at the nationals. So it's more so based on not just if it depends, but everything does have its place within, a hypertrophy standpoint if it's given the factors of working, within 0 to 1 reps in reserve or like working to failure, and also to ensuring that, you're really controlling the load and also working within those like volume modules of how to actually build muscle tissue, because also bodybuilding base is somewhat depicted off volume as well. So, but intensity is the biggest factor. So I think, they do have their place, of course, but in a context of like, what are you trying to get out of the athlete? I think if you're really trying to maximize, whether it's a beginner or an advanced lifter, like hypertrophy, I think you're going to probably implement something more machine-based or dumbbell-based or another variance of that that's going to provide just more benefits than cons. So, you can add in a deadlift on a back workout. Yes, that's great. But, like essentially one, the setup time is going to take a long time. Two, it's a high risk of injury again. And three, like you're not really going to, actually focus on targeting like area of the lats, for example, compared to something like a machine row where it's easy to set up and, it requires less time and you don't need to actually control the actual, synergistic load of balancing. So like stuff like that, I think is, like looking at all in retrospect, like to simplify it, yes, you can use it, but there's better ways. So I think that's one thing is like a lot of coaches will be afraid to do is sort of also be able to push an athlete outside of what their knowledge boundaries are. So I think like giving a bodybuilder, hey, let's do a barbell bench press controlled for this training block. And they'll be like, oh, I don't really do that. And, I don't really want to focus on, targeting my pecs because it's going to be dangerous. Like, but if you're focusing on the intensity and the load and controlling the movement, like it's going to be the same as doing like almost like a flat dumbbell. So except the flat dumbbell, of course, it's easier to set up. It's safer. You can get a greater stretch, all that kind of stuff. So, I think, yeah, like going from, again, just like the powerlifting fundamentals into bodybuilding, I think there's a lot we can take away from these powerlifters as well. But I think as well, there's a lot that powerlifters can take away from bodybuilding too. Like, for example, really maximizing accessory training and really ensuring that, like you're not just engaging in hypertrophy blocks, because hypertrophy is a very, very long and arduous method that takes a long period of time. So, I think we can always learn off one side of the spectrum and the other. So this is one thing I love talking about is like, just, again, like what can we learn from this athlete? Like, instead of having dogmatic views and sort of saying, well, I only do a unilateral cable pull down because, that's going to target my lats, instead of just picking up some weight and rowing it. Like, well, at the end of the day, man, like it's about intensity. Like it's, you got to make sure you're training hard enough. You know what I mean? So
yeah. It's really funny because, my partner, she actually showed me a video from, I don't know if you know this guy, Ben Yanes.
Oh, yep.
You've heard of him before? Yeah. Really like such a great page and a guy that obviously puts out a lot of content for how to be able to do specific movements, and ways of optimizing your training.
Yeah.
And it was just basically going over through a hamstring curl. And for a lot of people, they were recommended, or the person that he was reviewing was doing the lying down hamstring curl with your hips tucked into the pad, like and not letting it shoot up. But then there was this controversy of then Ben going on and saying, no, you actually want to stimulate your erectors when doing a hamstring curl. But then, my partner was asking me, he's like, oh, which one do you think is best? Which one do you think is best? And I just told her, that it's funny because nowadays, with there being so much, out there, so much content being produced, a lot of, experts putting out what they're saying, at the end of the day, people are forgetting you're just trying to just stick to the basics, but you need to be able to train with intensity. That's, I feel as if is a massive thing that people are forgetting. It's like, oh yeah, like I've got to do this specific movement because it's more optimal and I'm not going to injure myself. But then they don't actually end up just training hard. They just get really, really anal with the form and the technical side of things.
Yeah.
And especially with a lot of beginners, I definitely agree with you. It's like to lay that foundation, right? Learning the basics. And I think, powerlifting is really good for that because it teaches you how to do the big three movements, those compound exercises with really good form and technique.
Yeah.
And then it's only when you start getting, more advanced, correct me if I'm wrong, as you get more advanced, it's like, okay, maybe if your form starts to deteriorate a little bit, it's not the end of the world. We're still going to be able to, the main goal is to be able to obviously lift as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And then with bodybuilding, it's like, okay, you want to be able to lift as much as you can while still maintaining good form and technique. So I think that's actually a really good point that you raised, that bodybuilders can learn a lot from powerlifters. and powerlifters can learn a lot from bodybuilders.
Definitely. And that's why there's always this like great divide. Like there's like that no man's land between,
Yeah.
a powerlifter and a bodybuilder. And that's why like I love the fact that I've done both, is because having the credibility of, well, I benched 200 kilos before I was 21. Like I've,
Yeah,
like
it's huge.
benched 215. I benched two. I went from like 100 and I think within like a year and a half, I went from like a 172.5 bench, and like almost a year and a half later, I benched 215 at like a commercial gym.
Wow.
And even then, like, I wasn't really focusing on powerlifting training, but I'd just implement bench pressing because I loved it. But I think it's as well, yeah, like when it comes down to like, even just like breaking down form as well, like, on a fundamental standpoint, like you're not going to get that until they're reaching maximal loads. So that's when you start picking out, where they're actually faltering. And that's like, applying sort of that remedy to, ensure that they're not going to, break down in certain positions at a certain weight or, a certain load. So I think, yeah, like when it comes to powerlifting and bodybuilding, there's so much we can learn from each other. And it's just great having that prior experience from, doing powerlifting and doing bodybuilding, and really making sure like I can somewhat merge the two together. Because I think, when it comes to, at the end of the day, if you want to be the best at something, you're going to have to really be specific, and that's why with bodybuilding, of course, we're very fixed to these exercises that we have to stick with. But sometimes like right now I'm on a health phase, I'll just go in and move some weight. Like I just have some fun and train and just do some things I haven't done for a while. And like, whether that's like a deadlift or even like a barbell bench press, like stuff like that, like it's completely fine to do. So, I think, and especially as bodybuilders, I feel like powerlifters are more open to change now, especially because that new sort of industry is coming in about being like a hybrid athlete and being able to, run and jump and move and train and lift. Still, as bodybuilders, we're in this sort of dogmatic mindset where it's just physique based driven, which yes, that's the whole basis of competing, but also as well, you want to be an athlete. Like, like if you want to prove to the world that bodybuilding is a sport, like show them that you're an athlete. Don't just look like one, perform like one. So that's one thing I love, about moving back to powerlifting, like here and there, just to, lift some heavy weight and I feel like an athlete, still look like one, as long as I just make sure that I'm following my meal plan. I don't eat shit. But, I think that's one thing as well, is like powerlifters get caught up with just eating shit and making an excuse to get fat, which I highly, just really push back against, because I used to be like that myself, and it just gave me an incentive to eat as much shit as I could, thinking that, oh, my body weight's increasing, I'm going to bench more weight. Like, not really. Like, I struggled to get up the stairs at work, and, I had pretty much like my blood pressure like 19. It was really, really bad. So that's why I think, again, just having those two metrics to work off, they really do help. So, yeah, man, that's why I love, powerlifting and bodybuilding. So,
yeah, I think that's even definitely is something that a lot of bros fall into with obviously bulking. They get obsessed with a number on the scale and they think, oh, I'm about to hit 100 kilos, when really, if they went from like 95 kilos to 100 kilos, that's not 5 kilos of muscle, bro. That's just 5 kilos of just fat, water, and food that you haven't pooped out yet.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I think powerlifting is definitely taking a little bit of a step back in terms of popularity in Australia. I definitely do think bodybuilding has become now this massive wave of everyone wants to kind of do a competition for the sake of doing a competition. Would you be now someone that is, an IFBB pro and an advocate of the sport, and, hopefully at one point in the near future going to be representing Australia? Would you recommend the average gym goer or, a gym bro to do at least one competition in their life?
100%. Like, I honestly believe that competing in a bodybuilding show doesn't sort of show the overall due process of physical change within your physique, but I think more so the discipline and you develop throughout that period of, of the prep, and also the person you become and the habits that you sort of undertake and consistently, carry with you after the show ends. Like, for me, it was never about winning a pro card, for example. It was about like, how can I be the best version of myself over the course of this prep? And so pretty much through that, I really ensured that, like, I wanted to spend time with my family and my friends and my fiance and all my close, like, loved ones to me. And, the way I sort of wanted to go about it was having like a pro athlete mindset. And I think for anyone, even if you're competing for the first time or for the 10th time, I think looking back on, who you start off as a person when you begin a prep to the end, you've gone through a lot of toil and a lot of hardships, but a lot of successes, a lot of highs and lows. And I think that makes you realize that you really can do anything that you'd like to, as long as you have a plan to commit to, and also to execute. So, like, especially with my coach and myself, like we're very based on like, the mindset of like a pro, and, not thinking just like a bodybuilder, like thinking like an athlete, like how can I better myself with every single little thing I do? It's like that whole 1% every day, like not of the metric of physically being 1% every day better, but more so on the actual disciplinary side where, about slow, overall compounding gains over a long period of time. Like that's what's going to win you long-term, favorable results. So, I think when it comes to, someone competing for the first time, like I highly recommend that you do, even if you don't enjoy it after after the day's finished. Like I know a lot of people personally who love to prep, they love to, be a bodybuilder competitively, but then on the day, they don't like competing on the day. So, which, like for some people, it's not what they want to do. Like it makes complete sense because, you're standing up on a stage, in front of a lot of people that you don't know, getting judged for how you look, and they're basically wearing like, bodybuilding trunks, and you're all tanned up and oiled up. So it makes sense. I can understand that point of view. But personally for me, I love competing on the day because, again, going back to my days of, performing and being an entertainer, like that's sort of what I feel like I'm doing. I'm putting on a show for people who are coming to pay like, a lot of money for the bodybuilding competition. So I love putting on a show for people. So again, like I think just as a beginner, like doing a bodybuilding prep is something that you'll never forget, and it's something that you will always cherish regardless of the outcome. So I think honestly, it's like one of the best decisions that someone could make in regards to pushing themselves and, developing all these different disciplinary mindsets and aspects to themselves that they can carry over into the rest of their life, whether it's, work-based, relationship-based, or career-based. I think it's something that everyone should do. So yeah, 100%.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely great advice. So yeah, you were saying you and your coach. So who's your coach?
My coach is Matt Jansen from America.
Okay, Matt Jansen. He's a very well-known coach. Very coached. I think coaching Nick Walker.
Yeah, he coaches Nick Walker, Sean Clarita, like Brett Wilkin, I think.
Yeah.
Brett Wilkin as well. Fair few. So
is he
he's a very hard coach.
Oh, yeah. So I definitely do like that that relationship that you have. You mentioned with your coach, in the sense that you're not just wanting to be 1% better physically, but mentally. So what are some of your like non-negotiables, I guess, you've outlined with your coach when it comes to your training?
Oh, training. Very, very, that's a very good question. No one's really ever asked that. So I think with my training, I'm very big on sending my training logs, like videos of like my sets and like top sets to him every single week. So up until maybe like the last like 6-7 weeks before, the show, I would just film a top set, send it to him, and just make sure that, everything's moving correctly. And then he would basically just look at that aside from my check-ins and say, okay, like, deeper stretch, longer pause in this position, ensure you're not locking out the full position. So things like that, where I could just try and get as much of an edge and to improve my, previous week, whether it's, even increasing load or just getting more time under tension under the bar for my body, to really just ensure that, I'm maximizing every single movement I can. Because like when I used to train, I used to just like get in, get out, try to focus on moving as much load as I could due to being a powerlifter in the past, and sort of letting that go and understanding that there's other different metrics to use in order to build muscle tissue. Progressive overload is only one means of, building muscle tissue without getting stronger. So, for me, it was more like sending him those check-ins and videos and saying, okay, well, like what I need to work on. And, especially like my chest was like even smaller than what it is now. But I've really started to focus on building that up. And, because again, I bench pressed 200 kilos before I was 21, but I had no chest. It was all arms. So then we really had, like, just once I started with him, go back to the drawing board and focus on, like, simplistically just heavy incline, a machine-based movement or even another incline movement, and then a fly, a dip, and that's it. So, yeah.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So that's really, really interesting that you say, because everyone I definitely have spoken to so far, whether it be on the podcast or even guys that compete, it's one of the biggest mistakes that they've made, even for myself, was trying to lift as much as you possibly can and progressive overload. I think even for me today, so I just trained legs this morning, and
far out, you're an animal.
and because I knew I had this podcast, I was like, okay, I've got to train legs before this. I'm not going to go after
get out of the way. Yeah.
And I was doing hack squats, and in my mind, I was like, oh, I don't really feel like pushing more reps. I definitely just want to go for what I know I did last week. Okay, let's add a little bit more weight, and I'm just going to go for like 6 to 8 reps.
Yep.
But looking back on it now, reflecting on it, I'm just like, do I feel like my quads have been stimulated? Yeah, kind of. But would I, if I got maybe more stimulation, if I just, maybe pulled the weight back and gone for more time on attention, more slower eccentrics, maybe even gone for those, those more reps, and put aside my emotions of, oh, I don't want to do this, and just understand short term, just do it, 1 set, you're done.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well, I think that's something that even for myself, I'm trying to learn to do as well. Not just the pulling away from just trying to do more weight all the time, but recording your sets is, do you think that's something that if you are looking at seriously wanting to improve your physique and optimize your training, you should be recording your sets?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think like recording your sets is something that it's actually, it's incredibly overlooked, but overused. So in the context of it being overlooked is where people actually record their sets and they don't actually look at the quality of their reps, and they just use it to post content on social media, which is completely fine from my point of view. But, if you're an athlete or, you want to be the best at whatever you want to do, and you have to look at your training, like playbook, that's what you need to do. Like, especially like top NFL athletes, they have all their training and all their, their games recorded. Even like an NBA, they look at their playbooks and they have to sort of go over what they need to improve. So I think on the context of it being overused, more so people, just sit there and just film themselves doing stupid movements, in my opinion, and just sort of like sort of fluffing around, which that's, again, completely fine if you want to do that. But again, this is sort of on the basis of like, if you're really, really like focused on trying to become the best version of yourself as an athlete, you need to just focus on really just, again, filming the set. That's it. And you sort of go back on it and you really, really sort of like uncover more so like, oh, why am I not getting deep enough? Why am I not getting the stretch? Why can't I pause it? Okay, the load's too heavy. Pull back next week. Have a deeper stretch. Stuff like that, I think, is really, really important. So again, on the context of it being overused, like people will just stick up tripods and post like all this stuff, which I'm fine with. But I really think that when it comes to filming content, like there's a time and place for that as well, if you want to be a really, really high performance athlete. So, and again, of it being, sort of underused, like, people like athletes and high level bodybuilders that I see and I know personally don't film their top sets enough. They just, just take a picture of it, of the weight. Fair enough, that's impressive, but they don't actually have it, in your phone, because, 2 years down the track, you can go back and look at an RDL that you used to do and sort of look at how far you've come from doing a shitty RDL variation to the current stiff leg deadlift you're doing, which is even better with more load and more control. So stuff like that, it's like comparison pictures. Like, you're going to take check-in pictures every week if you care about your physique and how you look, if you're making significant changes or not, because otherwise, what are you sort of there to work off? Nothing, you know? So that's sort of my opinion based on it, you know, more so. Again, it's like, I love like filming my sets, but I won't really film anything that sort of doesn't really need to have the context of looking at, you know, well, how do I improve this? Like, most movements that are very, like, a lot smaller, like smaller isolation movements, I won't really film them much because, you know, I'll know how to stimulate them. It's more based on the larger movements in the gym, whether it's like a big leg press or some sort of squat variation or a big press, especially with movements that, you know, I'm lacking in, like my chest and my back. I'll really try to record those sets and have a look at them and sort of be like, okay, well, how do I work on this and how do I work on that? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing for me that I've only just started recently doing is recording my sets for my coach as well, so that
Love it.
I can get as much feedback as I possibly can. And I think one of the biggest reasons why I didn't do it for so long was it would always cut out my music. That's
Yeah,
why I just
yeah.
never did it. So now I've only actually realized that there's a way to actually, on like iPhones,
You
I don't
hold
know
it
about,
and then you got an iPhone?
you swipe it. Yeah, you swipe it across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that for 3 years now. That's why everything I film, I can still listen to music. It's so helpful.
I was just like, oh my gosh, okay, now this
Yeah,
is,
you
I can
just
record all
found
my
that out.
sets.
Yeah. It's a godsend. It's honestly such a godsend. It's so good that iPhone can do that. So very, very
Yeah, I don't know
helpful.
about Androids, but we don't care about Android users. That's fine.
Nah, sorry, we don't mess with that stuff.
All right, well, who are some of your biggest idols when it comes to bodybuilding? Like, what were like your biggest sources of inspiration that made you want to get into bodybuilding?
I think sort of looking at the classic like physique division of why, also the incentive of why I wanted to do that instead of open bodybuilding, because I was at sort of a crossroads after the VIX when, you know, I won basically every division in bodybuilding in the classic physique except the overall in bodybuilding, which I lost to Demetrios. He's an incredible athlete and he looks unreal. So sort of for me, it was based on, I wanted to also do classic physique when I just started bodybuilding because I saw Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think
Yeah,
everyone's, you know, OG inspiration was Arnold, like pumping iron, 1970s. I love that look, just a small waist, broad shoulders, big legs, big biceps, massive chest. And just really just focusing on just training and just enjoying your life while you're at it and, you know, enjoying your prep when, you know, the time has come. And that's why for me, I always looked up to Arnold Schwarzenegger, not just because of how he became such a successful bodybuilder, but also a successful athlete and businessman and entertainer down the track, and sort of again like how he utilized the work ethic and discipline from his preps into other areas of his life. So that's why again I also urge people to compete just for once in your life, you know, so just for that purpose too. So it was for me, you know, well, I can list off a few more, like also Callum Von Moger was a massive inspiration to me when I was
yeah,
younger. I remember when I first met Callum, he was jacked as fuck. He was actually like, he was like 120 kilos at the time. He was like nearly like, he weighed a little bit more than me right now. I'm like 118. And I remember seeing him like, fuck, like, you know, like he looks unbelievable. He's Aussie. He's super chill and just doesn't take himself so seriously, but has amazing physique. And he's just so like, takes his time out of his day for everybody. I also had a big thing for Kai Green at the time because I just love his
yeah.
posing. Posing is unbelievable.
The
And
Dirty
he's
Diana one, killer.
yeah, incredible. Even like Sean Ray looked great. Sean Ray's Mr. Olympia of Mariah Carey, My All. That was an unbelievable Mr. Olympia routine. I remember watching that. Yeah, a lot of old school bodybuilders like Samir Banut as well. He was great. Breon Ansley. So all the top guys in classic physique and also in the 70s and 80s of bodybuilding, I just look up to so much. So, you know, the day I sort of lose my small waist and midsection is when I'm done. Like, honestly,
Yeah,
because I think, you know, I just love bringing across that sort of, you know, that flow, you know, and also bring the ballet back into bodybuilding, which is something that I love to do. So, you know, I think, yeah, those are probably like my top inspirations, but definitely Arnold really kicked it off when I picked up that Muscular Development magazine when I was like 16. So, yeah, it's pretty crazy to sort of, you know, sort of be now like eventually competing in that sort of realm that they were. It's a little bit weird. Like, I don't know. Sometimes you get a bit of like imposter syndrome. It's like, oh, you know, like, am I really competing in the pro leagues now? It's like, yeah, it's like oh shit,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's just processing it, it takes some time, but for me, I just love training. So yeah.
Where do you see yourself now as so young, 24, um, to progress into doing your first pro show? Do you have like a timeline in
Oh,
terms of
honestly, like,
when you want to do your
don't
first
even,
pro show?
yeah, like, well, I was originally wanting to maybe look at something definitely next year. My ability to grow is very good. Like, I've always just been someone who can put on muscle mass very, very effectively. And for me, getting conditioned is not easy. So whether that's just because, I have the mindset of like, I love to eat food, or even just overall my ability when I go into a prep, like I have a very big range. Like, my peak off season, I was eating like over 6.5, 7,000 calories a day. And then on a peak week, I was eating like 1,900 calories. So it sort of skews a lot. I have a very big range, like when it comes to like, I was listening to a lot of like, stuff from like Eric Trexler, who's really good about, like metabolism and preps and body fat percentage and all that kind of stuff, and how, each athlete can have a very large range. But yeah, pretty much when it comes to, like an off season, I'm definitely really excited to start an off season in the next few months. So right now we're just doing like a nice health phase and staying in good condition, and just bring my calories up again, which has been great. Like training form's been mad. So sometime next year would be really good. I'm not really in a rush though, but at the same time, I do want to get up on stage and just sort of gauge on how far or how close I am to some of those top guys and top competitors, and just really enjoy the whole pro league experience. Like I'm so excited to, share it and with great people and even better athletes, and just, represent Australia as best I can. So,
Yeah, definitely. I think it'll be great to see another Aussie, competing overseas, because it's definitely a very, very heavily American and European sort of competitor list at the moment.
well, yeah, definitely.
And only quite recently has Australia started to bring out some of their own competitors. I'm actually, I don't know, well, you definitely do know him, Callum. I'm actually
Yeah.
really excited to see him, hop on the pro stage, because that'll be his first pro show as well.
No, he's already done a pro show. I remember he did
Oh, that's right. He did it, yes, last year, I think.
Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh and New
Yeah.
York, just Pittsburgh, from what I remember. But yeah, he looked unreal, and he only did like an off season for like not even 7 months, and he made crazy gains already. So it's
Yeah.
very, very exciting to see how well he'll do. He's put on so much size since then, and I know Callum personally as well, and him and I used to train a bit together as well. So it's great to see him progress as an athlete. So I think, in my opinion, like Callum right now is definitely like the top pick. Like, he's pretty much the best classic competitor right now in the country, in my opinion. So,
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see him, just really, really do us proud. And yeah, he's made crazy, crazy gains. So yeah, props
Crazy
to him.
progress. Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing though that I don't know if you feel the same way or see it the way I do. Now it's obviously with any sport, whether it's bodybuilding, maybe powerlifting as well. Well, definitely powerlifting. The limits are just being pushed more and more and more. Especially with I've definitely seen it. Obviously, everyone's seen it with opens bodybuilding.
Mm.
How the guys have transitioned from what we aesthetically and visually really prefer, more of that, like 80s, in between 70s and 90s, like that was like
Peak.
unreal, right? Like
Yeah.
Lee Labrada,
Oh,
right? I think
real physique. Yeah.
amazing, right? But then if
Yeah.
you were to put them against today's, pros, would they really place? Not really, because obviously the limits have been pushed, and that's fine, that's fair enough. But especially now, what I've seen with classic and the most recent pro shows, it's kind of like getting to that point where these are just smaller open
Yeah.
bodybuilders.
Yeah.
And do you feel as if that is sort of the census that it's going, that classic physique might take on more of like just a smaller open bodybuilders
I
approach?
think, well, I actually think that's more so applying right now to men's physique. And I think that's why, like Tyler Mannion and IFBB, they've started to, I think after this year, actually put on a weight cap for the classic, the men's physique competitors, because some of them were getting bigger than classic guys. And I remember, you know, before I was getting on stage at the Nationals, I remember the guy who won his pro card in men's physique. He looked unreal. And I'm like, this guy's got like
Yeah, the Singaporean guy.
really my size. Like, what is going on? You know, and we're all just like looking around like, what the fuck? Like, this guy's massive. Like, he's huge and he looks really, really good. So, you know, I think it's actually more sort of applying to men's physique guys now rather than classic because we have that weight cap. So, you know, and I think as well, the judging criteria is always going to stay true to itself. You know, I think that like, even an IFBB here, you know, like the judging criteria is so consistent. I think that's what makes Australian bodybuilding, you know, in my opinion, the best, you know, because I think in different countries it might differ and, you know, but like here, like we just follow, like Tony's very good as well with ensuring that, you know, we follow everything according to NPC standards overseas. So I don't really think so because, you know, also too, like, you know, the current Mr. Olympia of that division is the standard of what you're trying to look for, you know, sort of like how you do it in year 12 where whoever has the highest ATAR score or the highest score in their studies, that's the example and the skewing that they sort of work off, you know what I mean? So I think with, you know, with classic physique, like, yes, the competition and, you know, we're pushing the limits more and more and more, but I don't think it's getting to that point yet where it's like, okay, you know, it's time to sort of keep it to sort of what, you know, the 70s and 80s were with classic. But even with classic physique, you know, it's incredibly genetic division where if you don't really have a small waist, you're sort of going to be in a bit of trouble there and you have to sort of work a bit longer to, you know, create that illusion. So I don't really think so. More so with classic would be more the last division I would find that would be pushing that realm of just more size. But also too, you know, you look at muscularity is an important factor in bodybuilding in general because it's bodybuilding for a reason. So, you know, I think though, if you were pushing sort of that limit in men's physique or in classic, you know, they'll probably just mark you down and say, hey, you know, you're an open bodybuilder or, you know, you should be doing this division instead of this one. So I think that's why, like, you know, I probably disagree for now. It might eventually get to a point where it's like, okay, like, you know, we got an extra 5 pounds in our pro league category where it's just too much. Like I've got 6.5 kilos of stage weight to fill out, which is a lot.
Wow.
So
that is a lot.
You know, and like, yeah, that's a lot of muscle tissue. But, you know, in order for me to be a competitive open bodybuilder, I would have to be at least 120, at least how much I weigh now, like 118, like dialed into the bone.
Shredded.
And even then, that's not enough, you know, like I'm a taller guy. So, and, you know, like it's, in my opinion, like being taller in classic is a bit better in my opinion than being a taller guy in bodybuilding. You got to fill out so much size, so you eat so much food.
Yeah.
So you know, yeah, it's that I think it's more so, yeah, moving that incentive with men's physique, you know, like these guys are just huge. They look great. But I think, you know, when Aaron Banks won, they were sort of developing this new sort of judging criteria of like, this is the standard of what we want, you know, compared to someone maybe like Brandon Hendrickson, who is incredibly muscular and in my opinion should do classic physique because he looks better as a classic competitor. So yeah, it's very, very interesting to sort of see how, you know, over the next few years and how the past few years have unfolded with development of, you know, I guess, you know, different divisions, how much it's sort of pushed into that, like, wow, like this is next level stuff. So, but I think that's what makes the sport so exciting. It's always making you come back to watch the shows. So yeah, it's very interesting, man.
Yeah, very interesting, definitely. So, as you were saying before, you said that putting muscle on is definitely not an issue, which is great, right? But then also conversely, you said one of the things that you struggle with the most is getting down to those lower percentages of body fat. So, what were some of the struggles you faced during your most recent prep? During the whole prep, what were some of the other struggles that you faced?
Probably the biggest one would be definitely, yeah, making that weight cap of 108.4 kilos. So before the VIX, 2 weeks prior, it was Easter. Yeah, so it was Easter and I was 115 kilos. So I was nearly 8 kilos above the weight cap. And that was, you know, I was really going back and forth with my coach about like, look, I really want to do classic. I feel like I'm really, you know, suited for the class. and he's like, look, man, I think you should do bodybuilding. And, I was like to him, like, look, let's just try it. Like, I really do believe we can make that weight class. I'm not even lean enough yet. So I actually, just had to really just pull it all in. And 2 weeks later, I made the weight cap and I was weighing actually at 107.5 the morning of weigh-ins. So I was I was about 700 grams under the weight cap from what I remember, but I did pull some water. So, well, we did. So, yeah. And then that was sort of the point for me where, like, it's just more so for me, like getting down to those low body weight levels. Like my body wasn't used to that. I haven't been under 110 kilos in over 3 years. So for me, it was just more so just, we had to really, unfortunately, let go of a bit of that like training performance we had to maintain. I definitely dieted off a lot of muscle tissue, which I was fine with. I didn't really have much of an issue with that to make the weight. So now it's, obviously being 112.5 kilos for the weight class, it's less of an issue. So that was probably the biggest one, man. It was just like really having to nail it in and unfortunately losing it all at the back end of the prep, which is definitely not ideal, but your prep's never going to go perfect. Like you're never going to have a perfect prep, which I've always accepted. So, and I was just ready to just drop the hammer and pull the calories even more and up the cardio more, and that was it. So, yeah.
So
and
what was the lowest amount of calories that you got to?
Oh, definitely about 2000, 1900. So that was like the last couple of days before the show, which was like zero carbs, double cardio, and then like 2 days out, or so the day before the weigh-ins, I had to do a sauna session just to sort of drop a bit more weight and do like a small implementation, just a little bit of like a natural diuretic effect with pulling back some water. So that was probably, the most intense period. But honestly, running off a high fat diet, which we did a majority of the prep, I actually preferred. I love my fats. I don't really like going too crazy on carbs, especially now, like, reversing. I'm not on stupid amount of carbohydrates. I'm on more high fats and high protein. So it was definitely a very large push, but it was very, very cool to see my weight drop very quickly. It was very exciting. I was very happy and relieved. And then that morning of the weigh-ins, man, like being under that weight cap, it felt so good. It felt so good.
Yeah, such a massive relief.
Emotional release, and I'm just like, I finally did what I set out to do, and God had a plan for me, and he made it possible. So that was great.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the like harsh realities of prep that people don't see that happens behind the scenes?
Definitely, it's there's going to be times where you're just hungry all the time. Like I was hungry every single day for the last like 8 weeks, and I didn't really care anymore. You're consistently tired all the time, and you're trying to maintain relationships and social life, and you're putting on this. You're not trying to be a Debbie Downer for people, and you're always trying to make sure that you're constantly there for others emotionally and and in spirit. So that was probably one of the hardest things to do, is just like make sure that I wasn't allowing my prep to affect my lifestyle as a person, which the last few weeks I had to sort of really pull away from a lot of things and make some sacrifices, in my relationships, like not relationships, but more so just hanging around friends as consistently and just sort of having more energy for time for myself and my fiance. So that would have been probably the biggest, like challenges I faced, and also too going into sessions where you don't know if you can lift this weight, but it's logged on the session. You got to do it. So, and even pushing the cardio. Sometimes you're sitting there, you're like, I've got like another hour left. It's like, what do I do? And you just got to do it. So I think honestly, it was for me. I realized that I couldn't change the plan, but I could always change my attitude, and that was something that I've always been very big on. Is like ensuring that the attitude that you have is so important, because the majority of the prep, I remember being happy and I remember enjoying it regardless of physically how hard it was. So that's the biggest thing. We never look back on essentially those very small minute details of whatever we're doing in our lives. We only look at the majority of the process of our feelings. So my feelings were like, I actually love doing it no matter how hard it was. And but honestly, like, it did have its challenges. 100% physically, it was definitely physically the hardest prep I've ever done, but mentally it was the easiest because I love doing it, so very, very strange dichotomy there, but I hope that makes sense.
Well, that's the thing, you probably understood why this was important to you, obviously being the way that you view yourself as an athlete. You're not just a bodybuilder, but you're an athlete, and you want to be the best athlete that you can possibly be. So for you, your why, it made sense to you. So depending, if your coach were to tell you, okay, you have to do 3 sessions of cardio today, you just be like, this sucks, but this is very, very important to me. I'm going to do it regardless. I'm going to just do whatever it takes. Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
What I see with a lot of people, why they can't even just go to the gym, they can't even follow a diet, it's because they just don't understand why it's important for them.
Yeah.
So you go first. Yeah.
Well, no, I completely agree with that metric. Like, I think, when it comes to, an individual requiring a plan and the process, and when they receive that plan, sometimes it can scare you a bit, but one thing, it's like, I remember watching this like short little reel, and it was talking about how, fear is, an ocean in width, but it's a puddle deep. If you just take the step and step into it, you realize that nothing has changed. And it's so true. That's why when I got my calories pulled every time, my cardio increased and less refeeds. Like the last 6 weeks, I was on like 50 grams to 80 grams of carbs. No, about 80 to 100 grams of carbs every day, like for the last like 8 weeks. But that was the reality of it. Like, I had to do that, and that's okay. It's a part of the plan, and that's life. So honestly, like, for me, it wasn't an issue. And, I just realized, like, hey, like, that's the way it is. And if I want to compete in a bodybuilding show and do the best I can, that's got to be required of me to do it. But every time I realize, hey, it's going to get more difficult physically, but that's the whole point. And once that happened, I was actually very eager to sort of say, hey, like, when are the changes going to be made? And let me know when when you send them over. And the moment you sent them over, I'd start them. Like, if I got them halfway throughout the day, the rest of those meals throughout the day would be less carbs. Like, I wouldn't wait to the following day or the following week. So I think, if we're resulting, our actions based off emotions, we're never ever really going to make any sort of deemed progress in anything we do. So that's why that discipline of, consistently ensuring that regardless of our feelings, like ensuring that we can have a good attitude going about it and just following the plan is so important,
Yeah. There's I saw another, it's always going to be reels or some sort of TikTok.
It always is. It's always like a second videos. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was exactly that. It was, success does not give a fuck about your emotions.
Yeah.
I think
100%.
I can't remember who it was from. Let's just say it was from Alex Hormozy or someone like that.
Yeah.
But success does not care about your emotions or how you feel.
Not at all. And that's why I really just love sort of just following the plan and following the process, and like whether it was working, that's great. If it wasn't, well, just needs to be changed, and that was it. So, I think I used to be very emotional based upon how I looked or what the weight would be telling me, or, like how hard it would be or how easy it was. But now it's almost based on like, well, as long as I'm making progression, I'm happy, and that's based on no matter how hard or how easy it is, there's a plan that needs to be, produced. And then if we follow that plan, that's all that matters. So,
Exactly. Yeah. So, well, what would be now coming out of the prep? What is like the main struggles that you are facing now post competition?
It was more probably the first couple weeks, like you just have this big lead up to this huge day, and then it's done. And it's like, well, what do I do with myself, And I think that's why for me, it was like going straight back into training and preventing those post-diet blues was a lot easier than I actually thought. I knew for a fact that I didn't want to ruin this reverse phase and really try to just stay lean. And more so for me, it wasn't just making sure I become a water balloon and blow up and put on a shitload of weight and feel terrible. It was more just based on like, I want to set myself up in a good position to grow when I start my off season, and also to, just get my body healthy and, feeling good. So first of all, I just threw myself back into work, threw myself back into coaching, trying to really just sort of be there more for my clients and really just, be understanding for them. And they were so helpful. They knew what was required of me to give to that prep, and, giving back to them tenfold has been so fulfilling, just really focusing on my clients and my own work has been so good. Then also too, getting posing routines, like, help setting up for helping for Season B and C athletes and just making sure their posing's on point for, the future IFBB competitions coming up in the next few months and in a half year. But more so, it was just sort of understanding that you're actually going to be more hungry coming out of a prep than going in. So that was one thing I actually didn't really physiologically, mentally register as much. So I would just volume dunk all my food. Like I would eat like a kilo, like 2 kilos to 3 kilos of vegetables a day. I would absolutely just load up my food with veggies and fruits and just stay as full as possible for the first couple of weeks. I was having calorie increases as well each week, but just ensuring that I wasn't going overboard on my free meals. So, for example, like last week, I didn't have a calorie increase and, I went a little bit too overboard on like a free meal. I went to like some China bar buffet, all you can eat. They're really good. So, I was like, well, I feel pretty shit, so gave myself another calorie increase and that was good. So just made sure that, we weren't going too crazy on those free meals, but it's more just like the psychological diet fatigue as well. A lot of people don't really understand how bad it is for some athletes if they've, undergone a very, very rigorous prep, which physiologically I did. So sort of for me, it was realizing, like I can go and eat this, I can eat this and eat this, and you become very fixated on food. So, just ensuring that it wasn't food focused. I was making sure that my meals were pretty straightforward. I wasn't having any super, super tasty foods those first few weeks. And yeah, just really watching my weight and just ensuring that like the rate of gain was pretty consistent where, I'm trying to put on at least like 1.5 to 2 kilos a week, which, it's a pretty aggressive approach, but, I'm sitting around 117 to 118 right now.
You're a bigger dude.
Yeah. So, and also too, understanding like, putting water back in and food, food nutrients, muscle glycogen, and trying to build back lost muscle tissue. It's been great. So I think it does depend though for every single person. Like it's very different. But for me, it was just really trying to keep the reins in those first few weeks, especially when, the floodgates are open. You can do whatever you want, and well, not really, because at the end of the day, now you're a professional and you have standards to look up to, and you set for yourself. So, and it's very easy for people to sort of go off track because if they're not a good cook, if you're a shit cook, you're not going to want to eat your meals you make. So you just want to go out and eat fucking pizza or something, But
yeah, I think that's one thing though that prep teaches you. Prep teaches you to become an awesome cook.
100%. And I think marrying a Sicilian was the best thing I ever did. They just got really like good like variants. Like in like today, I had another family lunch, but I had a free meal last night. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I didn't have my first meal, I'm just waiting for the lunch. And I was like, okay, a bit of pasta, that's all right. And then just sticking to big salads and lots of chicken, just making smarter choices for yourself as well, I think is so good. Like learning to educate yourself as well, based around making smart decisions long term. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to follow a meal plan year round unless you're a competitive bodybuilder that competes every single 6 months. Most people just want to find healthy, consistent alternatives to living a pretty balanced lifestyle. So I think that's one thing I really try to urge to all my athletes and also my lifestyle clients as well is you need to start making decisions for yourself as well. You can't just rely off what a coach is telling you. So I think that was the biggest one too. Coming out of the prep is just understanding like one, getting good at cooking and not, falling off your meal plan, but also two, understanding if you want to have a bite of something here and there, do that. If you want to enjoy a nice dinner with, family and friends, but you've already had a free meal, do something that's probably a bit cleaner. Don't go to KFC or some shit or do some dumb stuff like that, So just making smart decisions for yourself as well and really ensuring and understanding that this sort of insatiable hunger that you get post-show is incredibly normal. It's going to happen. Your body is a very, very smart homeostatic system that works against anything. And that's why we're so, such like the most intelligent species in the universe that's known to man. So, that's why it's very, very, it's interesting. So, those are probably the biggest challenges I faced, but overcoming them with great, like my fiance was so helpful. She's also competed in the past before. So just sort of hanging around people too that have that understanding and, they know that I sort of can't just eat whatever I want up until, the next few weeks where it gets a bit easier, a bit more flexible. It's been great to have that supportive, group around you. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. Especially people that have maybe done it before. They don't have to have done it before, but people that have like-minded um, headspaces or goals that understand that the mission is not done yet. It's only just the
Yeah,
beginning.
definitely. Yeah, it's just
Definitely.
started.
Yeah, it's just literally just starting. So,
Yeah.
Jaxon, we've now come towards the end. It's been a pleasure having you on the Built podcast. But one thing that I like to ask all my guests is a common theme, a common question, and it is, what would be the biggest piece of advice you would tell your earlier self when you were just starting your fitness journey? So when you were 15, when you were just picking up your first dumbbells, what would be the biggest piece of advice?
Never give up. Simple as that.
Never
Yeah.
give up. Did you feel
So
as if there
simple.
were? It's so simple, but I think that really resonates, especially with your answer on why every gym goer should do at least one bodybuilding prep, is because it teaches you that discipline, one, but two as well. If you want something, if you want anything, you can have it. You literally can
Go
have
get
it
it.
as long as you just
Get
don't
it.
give up and you have that
Yeah.
self-belief. So yeah, I like that one. It's simple, but it's so true. Never give up.
Yeah. It's just like if I knew my 16-year-old self heard that, it would know that by if I just keep going, I'll get there, you know? And I don't need to tell my younger self a lot because I would know. And I always had these goals and dreams that I wanted to achieve. And, I think having that dream of becoming an IFBB pro, I've had that dream for like 6, 7 years. And, saying those three words, I would know instantly what that means. So, it would mean a lot to me, but that's why, again, I want to inspire this younger generation, you know, current and, past and present. So yeah, it's an honor. Thank you.
Awesome. I love it. All right. Well, Jaxon, where can the people find you?
Yeah, I'm on social media. Like I've got a YouTube account, just Jaxon Guerin, just my name in the corner you can probably see. And then also to my Instagram is Jaxon Guerin as well, just with no spaces, no caps. So you can find me through there. Also, my links will be on there for like Chungus coaching, all my, sponsors and stuff, which have been great. So yeah, you can find me through there and, hopefully you can learn something. If not, catch you later.
No, I definitely know, especially, you being the first IFBB pro on the podcast, um, all the viewers would definitely be able to get a lot of value from this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to
Alrighty.
I've given my piece as much as I could, so I'm glad to help out as much.
And next time in Melbourne, I'm going to get some posing coaching off you as well.
100%, man. We'll do a session as well, and we could
Yes.
do like a nice disgusting leg day, or we can do something a bit more chill. I'm always down for whatever, man.
All right, man. I'm looking forward to it. And
Pleasure,
then,
bro.
yeah, it's going to be great. I can't wait to also
Done.
see you on the pro stage in the foreseeable
Thank
future.
you. Very exciting. Thank you
Alrighty.
so much, man.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Likewise. Alrighty. Until the next.